그 음식을 소비자들에게 잘 전달하기 위해서 많은 고민들을 하고 요리를 하고 있는 음식점입니다.
Arirang TV is conducting an overseas TV viewer survey to provide you with a better global broadcast service. Share your valuable feedback on the Arirang TV website www.arirang.com or mobile application. Survey participants will be selected at random to receive special gifts. 2025 Arirang Overseas TV Viewers Survey. We look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome to the Globalists. Welcome to the Globalists. Welcome to the Globalists. We're in a new set, a brand new set.
I am a globalist.
And I'm the globalist.
And I'm the globalist who wants to bring jang right into your kitchen.
In our headlines on this Tuesday, August 12th, here in South Korea, President Kim Keon and his US counterpart Donald Trump will sit down for their first summit on August 25th at the White House. Meanwhile, a business forum took place here in Seoul earlier on this Tuesday to bolster economic ventures between South Korea and Vietnam. And the song Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters tops the Billboard Hot 100 this week after debuting at 81st place at the start of July. The presidential office here has confirmed that President Lee Jae-myung will meet with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump at the White House on August 25th. Arirang's Yoon Jung-min files this report from the top office.
The date has been made official for the first E-Trump summit, August 25th. President Lee Jae-myung will be in Washington from August 24th to 26th upon invitation from U.S. President Donald Trump. According to the top office in Seoul, it'll be a working visit involving a luncheon. During the first summit in more than 2 months since Lee took office, the agenda will include key issues.
The two leaders will discuss ways to develop the South Korea-U.S. alliance into a future-oriented, comprehensive strategic alliance in response to the changing international security and economic environment.
An economic partnership on chips, batteries, and shipbuilding will top the agenda, as well as high technology and critical minerals, as part of the Allies' framework trade deal that was reached late last month, before the Trump administration's August 1st deadline. Security issues that were not addressed at that time could be on the table. Eyes are also on whether the two leaders will discuss resuming dialogue with North Korea, reflecting peace efforts by the new government in Seoul.
The leaders will discuss measures to coordinate peace on the Korean peninsula and denuclearization, while further strengthening the robust South Korea-U.S. combined defense posture.
First Lady Kim Keon will be accompanying the president. Business leaders could also join the trip, though the presidential office says it has yet to be decided. With much speculation that President Lee's trip to neighboring Japan will precede his U.S. trip, his office remains tight-lipped, adding it's sounding out various possibilities. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
And President Lee Jae-myung has called yet again for tangible efforts to ensure workplace safety in response to a number of tragic industrial accidents this year. Remarks to this end were shared at a cabinet meeting on this Tuesday, during which he stressed the need to move away from what he described as a regressive republic of industrial accidents. To take a listen.
피할 수 있는데 피하지 않았다든지, 특히 돈을 벌기 위해서, 비용을 줄이기 위해서, 지출해야 될 비용을 아끼기 위해서 누군가의 목숨을 빼앗는다고 하는 것은, 그건 저는 전에도 말씀드렸습니다만 이게 일종의 미필적 고의의 살인 또는 사회적 타살이다.
Earlier on Saturday, the president had ordered the Labour Ministry to share potential strategies against such accidents at today's meeting. Also, on the local front, a forum to boost economic ventures between South Korea and Vietnam took place here in Seoul earlier on this Tuesday. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young has details.
To mark the first visit in 11 years by Vietnam's top party leader, the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry hosted a business forum on Tuesday, aiming to bolster economic cooperation between the two nations. The forum was attended by Vietnam's Party General Secretary Do Lam, 500 officials from both governments and the business community, and South Korean Prime Minister Kim Min-seok.
Since establishing diplomatic ties in 1992, Korea and Vietnam have mutually become among each other's top 3 trading partners. Korea is also Vietnam's largest investor, with nearly 10,000 companies operating there, making them essential economic partners across diverse sectors like textiles, electronics, chemicals, and shipbuilding.
Prime Minister Kim further emphasized expanding cooperation beyond manufacturing into new industrial sectors such as high-tech, culture, and digital, and also underscored comprehensive supply chain collaboration, particularly in energy. Vietnam's finance minister highlighted mutually beneficial cooperation.
The Vietnamese government welcomes Korean businesses to jointly enter Vietnam and third markets, and we are prepared for mutually beneficial cooperation. We will particularly work closely with Korea in new energy, semiconductors, AI, and the e-digital economy. And we will spare no support for large-scale cooperation projects.
The forum notably spurred significant collaboration, culminating in the signing of 52 memoranda of understanding across diverse sectors, such as industrial cooperation, energy, and food and tourism. Specifically, 47 Korean companies and organizations, along with 37 Vietnamese counterparts, committed to strengthening cooperation in a wide array of fields, from energy, shipbuilding, and aviation to cutting-edge areas like AI, advanced materials, and drones. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
And President Lee Jae-myung and First Lady Kim Hee-kyung invited Vietnamese Party General Secretary To Lom and his spouse Nguyen Phuong Lee to the Sangchunjae reception hall at Cheong Wa Dae on this Tuesday. According to the top office, they were treated to music performances featuring traditional instruments of their two countries. Also, over tea and a stroll in Nok Chiwon Garden, the two leaders reportedly reaffirmed their commitment to advancing bilateral cooperation. The presidential office also made note of the fact that this reception was the first formal event at Sangchunjae under the Lee Jae-myung administration in honor of a state guest. Meanwhile, cooperation between South Korea and Vietnam also includes that in the field of filmmaking and broader entertainment. Our culture correspondent Park Gun-woo files this report.
I'm abandoning my mom. This recent popular movie in Vietnam surpassed the break-even point in the country just 3 days after its release. What's notable is that it's a Korea-Vietnam co-production, starring popular actors from both countries. More such collaborations are expected as the culture ministers of Korea and Vietnam met in Seoul to explore ways for sustainable growth in the culture industry.
Since establishing a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2023, we've strengthened cooperation in various sectors. With our ties closer than ever, it's time to take cultural exchange and cooperation to the next level. We see the culture industry's potential and ripple effects as a key driver of future economic growth.
Vietnam has also signaled its commitment to cultural cooperation, following its recently unveiled national strategy to build a culture industry centered on digital transformation.
Korea is a culturally advanced country whose new technologies add significant value to its cultural industries. We hope to learn from Korea's expertise to further develop our industries as we share cultural common ground.
Positive messages from both sides led to MOUs being signed between companies from both countries on Monday, covering joint film and game projects.
Korean content are very popular in Vietnam, from music to drama series to movie. And I'm very happy that this year the collaboration extends into another level. Co-produce a Vietnam-Korean movie with the original story. We will be filming in March and releasing end of 2026.
And more Korean companies are diversifying their content creation with their Vietnamese counterparts.
We're exploring collaborations such as remaking films with our IP and co-producing Vietnamese dramas or casting Vietnamese actors in our dramas. While there may be cultural sensitivities or differing social norms, these can be addressed from the early planning stages.
Korea's Culture Ministry also announced plans including financing and tax incentives in the cultural field on Monday, with the aim for the industry to generate 300 trillion won in revenue by 2030. With more of these efforts paving the way for broader collaboration between the two countries, more cultural content is expected down the road. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
In our interview segment today, we share with you the second part of our online exchange with the Korea chair of the U.S. think tank CSIS, during which he weighed in on prospects of a summit between the U.S. and North Korea on the margins of the APEC meeting here in South Korea later this year. Kim Jung-sil reports.
Victor Cha, Korea chair at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, says Washington's official stance remains unchanged. The end goal is still the denuclearization of North Korea. But he warns that's no short-term prospect.
Stated U.S. policy is the end game is denuclearization, right? That's our stated U.S. policy. But that's really a long-term goal, I mean, given how much North Korea's nuclear program has developed. So the question then becomes, in the interim, what would the United States be seeking?
In that interim, Dr. Cha says Washington could pursue other priorities and perhaps a diplomatic opening. He suggested that if the U.S. president attends October's APEC meeting in Gyeongju, the trip might also take him to Panmunjom and possibly to talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
If that happened, I just want to ask you the real end game for both sides this time?
Certainly, I think some form of freeze on the program, some of the initial steps towards denuclearization would be important. But at the same time, there are other things that I think the United States is concerned about when it comes to North Korea. And one of them, of course, is their deep military relationship with Russia.
He says that relationship now factors directly into Trump's top foreign policy priority.
This is clearly a priority of the Trump administration to end the war in Europe. And North Korea now plays a role in that. So one wonders whether that will become a high priority issue if President Trump meets the leader of North Korea.
But Pyongyang has set its own terms for any meeting. In a recent statement, Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of North Korea's leader, rejected any challenge to the regime's nuclear weapons status.
She made very clear that any meeting between the two leaders will be as de facto recognized nuclear weapon state. So that is a condition that they've laid out for meeting, and I think it's one that the Trump administration has to determine whether they're willing to meet that condition or not.
Dr. Cha says a Trump-Kim meeting could sideline denuclearization issues for others, such as Pyongyang's military ties with Moscow or stopping North Korea from helping rebuild Iran's nuclear program.
But as we've seen with this president, in the end, he makes the decision. And as far as we know, he won't make that decision until he walks into the room with Kim.
For now, all eyes are on what Trump decides when and if he meets Kim. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
On the local front, also on this Tuesday, the ruling Democratic Party has launched a special committee on judiciary reform. The committee will review the proposals the party has presented thus far and seek to chart a clear path for the changes ahead. Among the key proposals is a bill to expand the number of Supreme Court justices. And to this end, DP leader Cheong Wa Dae urged members to work with the mission of completing this reform before the Chuseok holiday in early October. A Seoul court held a hearing today on the arrest request against former First Lady Kim Keon Hee. Kim faces charges of stock manipulation, interference in party nominations and influence peddling. Prosecutors say there is a high risk of evidence tampering if she is not arrested. After the 4-hour hearing at the Seoul Central District Court, Kim was moved to Seoul's Sudden Detention Center to await the court's decision. A decision could come as early as tonight, and if granted, it would be the first time in the country's history that a former president, that is Yoon Suk-yeol, and First Lady are detained simultaneously. A recent poll shows over 50% of small business owners have noted increased sales following the launch of the so-called consumption coupons. The survey involved over 2,000 merchants and was conducted over a 3-day period late last week by Korea Federation of Micro Enterprise and Korea Merchant Association. Findings reveal that about 56% of the respondents posted sales growth, with 51% saying their sales rose between 10 to 30%. More than 70% supported similar consumption initiatives, suggesting that the coupons be limited for use in traditional markets and that their value be raised.
The tariff truce between the US and China will stay in place until early November, amid speculation that the two leaders may hold talks on the sidelines of the APEC meeting here in South Korea this coming autumn. Our Lee Soo-jin has the latest.
U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Monday extending the U.S.-China tariff truce by 90 days. The move finalizes the outcome of last month's high-level trade talks in Sweden. As a result, U.S. tariffs on China cut to 30% in May, and China's tariffs on the U.S. lowered to 10% will remain in place until early November.
We'll see what happens. China's been, we've been dealing very nicely with China. The relationship is very good with President Xi and myself.
Analysts say any breakthrough is likely to come only after a face-to-face meeting between President Trump and China's President Xi Jinping, possibly on the sidelines of the APEC meeting in Gyeongju, South Korea this October. Trump said in an August 5th phone interview with CNBC that Xi had asked for a meeting and that they would most likely meet before the end of the year if a deal is reached. In a separate announcement, Trump said gold imports will be tariff-free. On Truth Social, the president wrote gold will not be tariffed. The post came after reports that U.S. Customs plan to apply tariffs to 1 kilogram gold bars, news that sent prices to record highs last week. Following Trump's statement, gold futures fell more than 2%, calming earlier market jitters. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
And staying with remarks by Mr. Trump, but this time regarding Russian aggression against Ukraine, he has reaffirmed efforts to ensure a trilateral summit, including his Ukrainian and Russian counterparts. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed on Monday that he would be holding a face-to-face meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday in Alaska. Trump also raised the possibility of a trilateral summit involving Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky after his one-on-one talks with Putin. However, he said while he would be available if needed, he'd prefer a bilateral meeting between Putin and Zelensky. While leaving open the possibility of a trilateral summit, President Trump stated that he would first hear Putin's thoughts and potentially share the details of the meeting with President Zelensky, the EU, and NATO leaders.
I'm going to meet with President Putin, and we're going to see what he has in mind. And if it's a fair deal, I'll reveal it to the European Union leaders and to the NATO leaders, and also to President Zelensky. I think out of respect, I'll call him first, and then I'll call them after.
Meanwhile, during a press conference at the White House on Monday, Trump said he'll try to get some territory back for Ukraine during his meeting with Putin on Friday. Trump stressed that Russia has occupied a big portion of Ukraine. The U.S. leader raised the possibility that both Russia and Ukraine would need to make some territorial concessions in order to work out a peace deal, saying that there could be some swapping changes in land. However, Zelensky on Saturday shot down any chance of Ukraine giving up territory captured by Russia in the ongoing war. In a video posted on X, Zelensky said that Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupier, adding that his country will not reward Russia for what it has perpetrated. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
On the entertainment front, K-pop Demon Hunters continues to make Billboard headlines, and this week its song Golden topped the publication's Hot 100. Our Pyongyang covers this feat and its broader implications.
The K-pop Demon Hunters sensation shows no signs of slowing down, this time topping the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Praised for its high-quality animation, visually striking characters, and clever use of Korean traditional folklore, the Netflix original animation soundtrack Golden climbed up a spot to reach #1 for the first time. Billboard announced the feat on Monday, local time, noting that Golden is the 9th song linked to Korean pop to top the Hot 100, and the first to do so with female lead vocalists.
This is the first time a girl group has topped the Billboard Hot 100 since Destiny's Child. And in K-pop history, it's also the first time virtual idols, or an animated act based on K-pop, have reached #1 on the chart.
Sung by the virtual girl group HUNTR in the movie, the vocalists behind the song are Korean-American artists EJ, Ray Ami, and Audrey Nuna. Of all the tracks in K-pop Demon Hunters, Golden has stood out for its soaring high notes in the latter part of the song, a section that has even become a benchmark for proving one's vocal skills and sparked the Golden Challenge among K-pop stars. Big K-pop names like Solar of Mamamoo, Lily of Mix, and Ailee have all joined in.
K-pop is not just about listening to and enjoying the music. It's about enjoying it together. That's one of K-pop's charms. Participating, singing along, even creating content, all of that has helped bring the songs from K-pop Demon Hunters closer to the public.
Earlier this month, Golden also topped the UK's official singles Top 100 chart, one of the two biggest music charts in the world, alongside Billboard Top 100, making it a rare track to conquer both the UK and US pop markets. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In the United States, President Donald Trump has declared a public safety emergency in Washington, D.C., placing the city's police under direct federal control. At a White House press conference on Monday, President Trump also announced the deployment of 800 National Guard troops. Trump stated the move was to reestablish law, order, and public safety in the Capitol. He referenced the emergency powers granted by the D.C. Home Rule Act, which allow him to federalize the Metropolitan Police Department, bypassing elected city leaders. Attorney General Pam Bondi was appointed to oversee the federalized police force. National Guard troops are expected to arrive by the end of the week, with between 100 and 200 deployed at any given time to assist the police. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser described the president's actions as unsettling and unprecedented, asserting that the city is not experiencing a crime surge and that violent crime is at a 30-year low. The United Nations has strongly condemned a targeted Israeli airstrike that killed 5 Al Jazeera journalists in Gaza on Sunday, calling it a serious breach of international law. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres condemned the killing and demanded an independent and impartial investigation into the incident, according to his spokesperson on Monday. Al Jazeera labeled the attack a blatant and premeditated assault on press freedom, asserting that it aimed to silence those documenting the impending occupation of Gaza. The U.S.-based Committee to Protect Journalists urged accountability and denounced Israel's repeated claims of Hamas affiliation as justification for targeting journalists. According to reports, at least 242 journalists have been killed in Gaza since the war began. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said on Monday that Australia will formally recognize a Palestinian state at the upcoming UN General Assembly in September, aligning with similar commitments from France, the UK, and Canada. The decision is conditional on key assurances from the Palestinian Authority, including excluding Hamas from any governing role, demilitarizing Gaza, and holding democratic elections. Meanwhile, New Zealand's foreign minister said his country was also considering recognizing Palestinian statehood and would make a formal decision in September. Finally, in China, a robot band comprised of 5 autonomous humanoid robot musicians will debut at the opening ceremony of the World Humanoid Robot Games in Beijing on Thursday. The ensemble, engineered by Hefei Panxi Technology, will include a keyboardist, lead guitarist, drummer, bassist, and rhythm guitarist, and will use a shared computing system that processes musical scores in real time to coordinate movements. Engineers have upgraded pneumatic joints with faster motor-driven ones to handle quicker rhythms during their performance, which will feature traditional folk songs. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
It has rained in the southern parts of the country today due to a slow-moving front located in the Southern Sea. In Yeosu, there was more than 45 millimeters of heavy rain per hour. Heavy rain warnings have been issued in the mountainous areas of Jeju Island, and heavy rain advisories are also in place for some parts of the south coast. Tomorrow, this rain will spread across the country. In particular, it is expected to rain as much as 150 millimeters in northern Gyeonggi-do province and Incheon, and up to 120 millimeters in Seoul. Please be prepared to avoid damage from rain. The morning will start warm at 25 degrees Celsius in Seoul and Gwangju, Jeju at 27 degrees. Highs will move up to 27 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, Gwangju and Daegu 32 degrees. It will get hotter in the second half of the week when the rain stops. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.
인식 시작합니다.
헤이 미러, 오늘의 운동 루틴 시작해줘.
네, 오늘의 운동 루틴을 시작하겠습니다. 레디, 고! 좀 더 앉아 보아요. 4, 3, 2, 1. 고생했어요.
We move. Annually, we invest more than 10% of our total revenues in research and development and 15% in the R&D workforce. Main products, pneumatic cylinders, solenoid valves, hydraulic cylinders, air preparation units, and grippers, and all other products are manufactured through systematic management. KCC Precision.
We are a well-known company in the field of road safety facility manufacturing. We operate the factory nationwide in Korea. To go beyond the demanding safety standards of the ages, we are a global network, local, worldwide, the global small and strong company appointed by Korean government. We are KSI.
President Kim Keon Hee is scheduled to sit down with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump at the White House on August 25th for talks to advance their alliance and economic partnership. We have more up next. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective. It is Tuesday, August 12th here in South Korea. I'm Min San-hee. Now, following his hosting of the Vietnamese political leader here in Seoul this week, President Kim Keon Hee is poised to depart for the U.S. for talks with his American counterpart Donald Trump, amid speculation about a possible summit with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba either before or after the much anticipated meeting, that is, at the White House. For more on this, I have freelance journalist Rafael Rashid here in the studio. Rafael, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be back.
I also have Professor Che Hyun-jin at Kyunghee University live on the line. Professor Che, it's good to have you on.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Right, we will start here in the studio. Rafael, so President Kim Keon Hee will sit down with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump on August 25th at the White House. Now, this was confirmed by the top office here. What else has been shared about the agenda ahead?
Right, so I don't think we know too much at the moment, but Lee's office has confirmed the summit will focus on developing the US-South Korea alliance into a comprehensive strategic alliance and advancing partnerships in semiconductors, batteries, shipbuilding, and critical materials. This is, of course, off the back of the tariff deal that was reached last week. And I suppose we will see a few more details emerging in the next week and a half about what exact agenda items are going to be taking place, assuming there'll be something to do with cost sharing of US forces here. But overall, we have the date, and Lee will be in the US for 3 days. And so, yeah, there should be some more details coming out in days to come.
Right. And Rafael, there's also talk about President Kim Keon Hee sitting down with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba within this month. What do we know about that potential meeting as of now?
Right, so both the Korean and Japanese governments are coordinating with President Lee Jae-myung's office to basically coordinate his visit, hopefully at the end of August, according to Japanese media and other diplomatic sources. And of course, this coordination has gained attention following confirmation that Lee will be meeting President Trump in Washington at the end of the month. And so I think the timing reflects, I guess, practical considerations as both countries work through bilateral issues amidst broader trilateral discussions with Washington. And I think we've seen that Lee's approach to Japan has changed considerably over the past few months or years, I guess, since taking office. Just after he was inaugurated in June, he told Prime Minister Ishiba that the strategic importance of the South Korea-Japan relationship is growing in today's environment, marking a shift from his previous criticism of Japan, of the trilateral cooperation under Yoon that we saw in 2023 with the Camp David summit, which at the time he called a grave mistake. So I do see that there's been a bit of a shift in the rhetoric, and even just yesterday, Japanese Agriculture Minister came to Seoul for a visit and addressed Japan's push for South Korea to lift the import restrictions that were imposed on seafood imports after the Fukushima disaster. So again, there might be some unresolved issues to come, but overall, Japanese officials, I think they've praised Lee for his so-called pragmatic diplomacy, with Ishiba's special advisor on national security recently saying that Japan has big expectations of Lee's new direction. And of course, this comes amidst the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two sides. And this would be potentially the first bilateral meeting between when Lee goes abroad. Of course, whether or not it happens before or after Trump, we have yet to see.
Right, and staying with that, Professor Che, what would be the diplomatic implications of a summit visit to Japan by the South Korean leader prior to a similar trip to the US, if of course the scheduling does indeed turn out that way?
If the summit in Japan happens before the one in Washington, I think it will send an important signal. So it will show that the Seoul values Tokyo as much as Washington, and that Korea and Japan ties are a very important partnership on their own, not just part of a Korea-US alliance. The timing is also important. So this year is the 60th anniversary of the Korea-Japan diplomatic relation. And therefore, both sides are trying to move beyond the past historical tensions and build a more future-oriented partnership. And for this reason, President Lee and Prime Minister Ishiba, they both have stressed the importance of mutual respect and trust. And also, we are seeing more uncertainty in world affairs today. And as we know, the United States is taking a very tough trade policy, and also there is some possibility of the changing role of American troops stationed in East Asia. So in this uncertain situation, the close cooperation between Korea and Japan is more important than ever. So I think this upcoming summit in Japan is not just symbolic. It lays the foundation for close cooperation and deeper dialogue between the two countries at a time when both South Korea and Japan share same uncertainty and challenges.
Right. Raphael, the Washington Post this past weekend published an extensive report that touched upon Mr. Trump's use of tariffs to promote America's security interests. That being said, it appears that his demands to descend on South Korea are forthcoming. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. So the Washington Post reported that Trump's administration has basically been using tariffs far more extensively than previously known, essentially weaponizing trade policy to achieve a range of national security objectives beyond simple trade balance concerns. So according to the Washington Post, which cites internal government documents, Trump's team has been linking trade negotiations directly to security demands that wouldn't traditionally appear in commercial agreements. For South Korea's part, or South Korea specifically, this reportedly included pushing Seoul to increase defense spending from the current 2.6% of GDP to 3.8%, so nearly 50% increase, and also demanding public support for expanding the US forces Korea's strategic flexibility, that is to say, using USFK assets for broader regional operations to better deal with or deter China, whilst also continuing to, of course, deal with or deter North Korea. The issue about shared the burden of sharing the costs of hosting the USFK was also seems to have been mentioned, and also Seoul's contribution to covering a bit more of the share. And if we remember well, the defense burden sharing demands are nothing new from Trump, who during his first term brought this up and tried to push South Korea to increase cost sharing contributions from around $900 million to $5 billion, so essentially a five-fold increase. That was at the time. Those negotiations basically stalled for over 18 months and weren't resolved until Biden took office. So I think there might be more to come, especially when the two meet in Washington at the end of the month. And this, I think, this approach represents what officials are, are calling not a very traditional way of doing a trade agreement. But this strategy appears to be designed to basically pressure key allies near China or in this region into closer defense relationships, including equipment purchases and expanded cooperation.
Right. The Trump administration has called for increased burden sharing with its allies. That being said, Professor Che, what are the prospects with regard to talks on defense cost sharing between South Korea and the US, do you think?
Yes, as Raphael just mentioned, President Trump may link tariff and defense cost sharing together in the upcoming negotiation. So this means that the talks in Washington will be very difficult. The President Trump is likely to begin with a very high demand, for example, asking Korea to almost double its defense cost sharing. And he may also want Korea to openly support for the strategic flexibility of American troops in South Korea, including in possible situation in the Taiwan Strait or the South China Sea. So from Korean perspective, we should be very firm, but also practical as well. So we need to gain some room for negotiation in Washington. To do this, we may have to show a degree of support for some key parts of Washington's security agenda. And one of them is, as I said earlier, the strategic flexibility of USFK. So this could mean more missions beyond the Korean Peninsula, such as near Taiwan or in the South China Sea. But at the same time, we must clearly say that any decision for Korean troops to join combat, especially in a direct fight against China, will be our own choice. And we can also point out that the Korea is already giving strong support to the United States. We are hosting American troops, and also we are paying major cost for military base in Pyeongtaek, and also we help strengthen deterrence against North Korea. And also we should explain that too much increase in defense cost sharing could weaken Korean public support for the alliance. So my view is that the talks in Washington will be tough, but in the end, our strategy should be balanced between protecting our own national security interests and also avoiding unnecessary conflict with Donald Trump.
Right, for sure. Raphael, a new U.S. national defense strategy is expected to be disclosed as early as this month. Now, for the sake of our viewers who may not be familiar with this document, could you tell us a bit about the NDS and the potential impact of the new strategy on the ROK-US alliance?
I think, well, as Professor Che alluded, I think for the US, China is a very big issue. And when we look at the details of this new revised document, I think we can see a lot of this transpiring. So the National Defense Strategy is essentially the Pentagon's master document that sets America's strategic priorities and military objectives. It's typically released every 4 years, and guides everything from defense spending to troop deployments globally. The Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, has directed Pentagon Policy Chief Elbridge Colby to complete the new document, the NDS, by the 31st of August, so at the end of this month. And he called it the single most important document to ensure the department is operating in accordance with the President's and my intent. Again, we'll have to see what the final document reveals, but this version seems to represent a fundamental shift towards what officials are calling America first and peace through strengths, with China specifically designated as the primary pacing threat. As for the ROK-US alliance, I think the implications are quite significant, as Professor Che mentioned, and the strategy explicitly prioritizes Indo-Pacific operations over global commitments, which means the USFK's mission seems to be expanding beyond just deterring North Korea. And I think, you know, we're seeing this especially, for example, with the new USFK Commander General Brunson, who acknowledged the other day that the US forces in Korea now face a nuclear-armed adversary to the north, increased involvement by Russia alongside the DPRK, and the broader threat posed by China. So this definitely seems to be a new a new way for the US to be approaching the region, and we cannot understate or overstate the importance of the burden-sharing pressures that will likely come up over coming weeks, if not months. And again, the Pentagon has indicated that South Korea and other Asian allies are subject to the new kind of global standard of spending 5% of their GDP on defense. So I think we will definitely see this burden-sharing issue coming up probably again and again. I think this represents what officials call the alliance modernization. I think it's a good word, whether we agree with it or not. It's definitely a new way in the region, essentially repurposing the USFK for broader regional contingencies, while of course maintaining a strong posture when it comes to North Korea.
You're right. Brunson also talked about the importance of defense skill, I believe, over defense size when he was speaking to the South Korean press corps. Professor Che, how feasible is it for South Korea to advance its alliance with the US under strategic flexibility, as you mentioned earlier, while maintaining a practical diplomatic approach to ties with China and, of course, North Korea?
In today's security environment, where the United States is openly linking trade and security together, the old approach of maintaining some balance between Washington, Beijing, and Pyongyang is no longer possible, I think. So therefore, on security matters at least, the South Korea should focus on maintaining and strengthening trilateral security cooperation with the United States and Japan. And therefore, in upcoming summit meeting in Washington, the Seoul should also express the principled support for key parts of Washington's security agenda, including the strategic flexibility of USFK and also stronger trilateral security cooperation to balance against China. But at the same time, we should also work to avoid any direct military clash with China. And also we need to maintain trade with China as smooth as possible. So this will help protect our economic stability, and also it will help reduce the risk of unnecessary confrontation with China. Also with North Korea, we must hold a firm line on deterrence, sanction, and also rapid response to missile or any military threat. But we should also keep small and practical opportunities on the table, such as cooperation on health, disaster relief, or talks to prevent the military incidents. So there is always paths back to dialogue when conditions allow.
Right. Meanwhile, moving forward, Raphael, Seoul has delayed a decision on Google's request for permission to export map data. Now, again, could you give us some context behind this situation?
Sure. So South Korea has postponed its decision on Google's mapping data request for the second time this year on Friday, and has been extending the deadline by another 60 days. So hopefully we'll see a decision in October. And this seems to be a bit of a recurring pattern. Google's first request came back in 2007 and again in 2016. So this is the third time. I think the core issue here is that Google wants to export South Korea's detailed map data to its overseas servers, which would finally enable full navigation functionality on Google Maps. That basically means at the moment we can use Google Maps but only look at points of interest, whether it's a bakery or a business or a restaurant, but you can't actually navigate. And Google wants to use this data, bring it on their servers abroad, a bit of calculation processing on the servers globally so that it can be viewed in real time with low latency for any user around the world. That's basically what Google wants. But Seoul's position has been, over the past basically almost 2 decades, has been national security concerns. Officials argue that as South Korea is in a state of war, technically with North Korea, detailed mapping data could potentially reveal sensitive military installations and facilities to the enemy. Google's stance, on the other hand, is that these security concerns are technically unfounded because the same data has already undergone some security screening process and is the same data that is being used by local rivals here in Korea. The Korean government says, well, you can make data centers in Korea, which Google has refused, but even if they did make data center in Korea, that doesn't resolve the problem of exporting the data to be calculated on a global scale. So that's basically what's happening. I guess we have yet to see again what the decision will be, and who knows, this might even be a part of a greater agenda related to the upcoming summit between Trump and President Lee.
Right. That being said, Professor Shea, do the roadblocks faced by Google Maps here in South Korea look to affect the course of trade and defense talks between Seoul and Washington, do you think?
This dispute on Google Map data could definitely influence the bigger talks between Washington and Seoul on trade and defense cost sharing. From the American perspective, the Trump administration sees this Korean ban on exporting high-precision map data as a kind of non-tariff barrier. So this means Washington may bring up this issue together with other topics, such as tariff and defense cost sharing. So in actual negotiation, this issue could be used as a bargaining chip of Washington to push Korea for more market access. But from Korean point of view, the government is worried about 2 things. The first one is about security concern. It was already explained by Raphael, but there's another concern. So there is an economic concern as well. If Google gets this data, it could help American companies like Waymo enter the Korean autonomous driving market, which may hurt local taxi and delivery services. So because of this kind of a reason, there could be some disagreement and some negotiation between Seoul and Washington, and therefore this topic will be an important part of the upcoming summit in Washington.
I see. Well, I suppose we'll know for sure on August 25th when the 2 leaders meet at the White House. Professor Che, as always, thank you so much for your insights today.
Very much.
And Raphael, as always, thank you very much for your time and thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
Right, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. Do join us again, same time tomorrow.
이어온 우리의 지혜가 제천에서 다시 태어났어. 세대를 관통한 선조들의 건강 빅데이터. 빅데이터. 우리의